And welcome back to the Situation Room with Carter Gibson. Today we'll be talking about Trump's ending of the Department of Education, Trump's actions to legalize workplace segregation, and Trump's stances and potential actions on Social Security. So first we'll talk about Trump's actions his ending of the Department of Education. This is bad news. Um, we know the plan here is to privatize and localize education as much as possible, and that's appealing to some, but it's not going to work out for the mass majority of people. There's a lot of so first of all, the regulation and oversight that we have in there. The Department of Education, that they're one of their main jobs is to make sure that standards are met, and so their job is to make sure there's consistency and making sure that students are being taught the right things and not misinformation. Losing that will be big. This is just going to increase economic inequality and equity in general. The Department of Education, a lot of their work is finding disadvantaged schools, low-income schools, students, rural areas, marginalized communities, and helping them and sending them grants, sending them money. So that being gone is going to play a big part. Financial aid is going to be a big deal. The Department of Education oversees financial aid for students, like Pell Grants or student loans, and eliminating it basically makes it so, that's just a big question mark. Are they going to hand that to another department? Are we never going to have federal aid again? I think the latter is probably true. We'll probably see a huge decline in federal aid and college graduation in general. And obviously, that's very beneficial for Trump and the Republican Party. But there's a lot more than just that. Like for instance, special ed students. The department is one of their main goals is protecting students with disabilities. Without that oversight, without that guidance, without that regulation, students with disabilities are going to face way bigger barriers, way more financial trouble, and way more social trouble. And another thing is, so they're trying this thing with the transgender athletes. They're trying to implement Title IX and ban transgender women from competing in women's sports. How are you going to implement that without a Department of Education? How are you going to? And that's just one. This is just one instance in the first 2 months of his presidency where he already used the Department of Education to get something in his agenda done. And now he's going to handcuff himself for that. And then, I mean, as far as just teacher development and student development, yeah, it's going to play a huge part. I mean, you're going to lose a lot of teachers. You're going to lose a lot of educated teachers. It's going to be really bad to see all that funding, all that support go somewhere else because it's really going to I mean, it's just going to increase the economic disparities, the social indisparities. Education is a big reason why we've made we've made progress in these fields. But with this decision, that's surely gone. Um, and I don't know. I just, I think the main thing here is this is Project 2025 being played out. If you told yourself, oh, Project 2025 is liberal propaganda, I have something to tell you. Ross Bott, he's a very, very powerful man. He wrote it. And you may ask, okay, who is he? He wrote this thing. You probably let's see who he is. Well, he's currently working for his government, and he worked for his last government. He's the director of the Office of Management and Budget, you know, and that's a huge position with a lot of power. So the what you're seeing is Project 2025 being played out. This is just one of the steps, Christian national. And as a Christian, I'm a subscriber to Christianity, but I'm not a Christian nationalist. I don't think I should indoctrinate my beliefs on everybody else. But yeah, I don't know. It's just silly. But let's move on to our second segment here. Trump's actions in legalizing workplace segregation. Thought it couldn't get any worse. Trump ended the the clause that made it so businesses, corporations, any employer basically can't practice segregation. It's the Federal Acquisition Regulation, Clause 52.22221, quote, the contractor agrees that it does not and will not maintain or provide for its employees any segregated facilities at any of its establishments, and that it does not and will not permit its employees to perform their services at any location under its control where segregated facilities are maintained. What this means is if you're under contract with the government, if you're which basically means just providing services to the American people, if you have a business or anything like that, you can't practice segregation. You can't practice it on your employees, and you can't practice it on your customers and consumers. And that's gone. That is no longer law. And it's just, I don't know. Uh, There's not really, it's kind of silly to be talking about something that monumental on a silly little podcast because it's like, what do I even say, It's, we're seeing the return of Jim Crow in our eyes. I want to say this. I had a family member, she recently passed away, and she was a teacher, and she was teaching during the times of integration and the ending of segregation in schools. And she taught in North Carolina, which is obviously in the South, a very that they were not very open to integration at the time, or at least the vast majority. And she started teaching, integrationist principles, including tolerance, togetherness, peace, harmony, before the integration of schools was demanded. And the Ku Klux Klan did not like this. The KKK, that night, they went to her house and burned a cross in her yard and left it there. And you know what she did? She didn't fucking back down. She kept teaching what she taught. She kept teaching what she believed. And I think that's really important. But it's really sad though, in retrospect, because now we're fighting that same fight that she had. She put her life on the line. We all know how ruthless, how terrorist like the KKK is. She put her life on the line. And now we have to fight that same fight again, which we are willing to do. But at the same time, we got to progress. We can't just keep going back and progressing what we already have. We need to make monumental progression. And whenever you have complacent liberal leaders who don't get the right stuff done, who don't do the right messaging, people on the fence just jump to the right. And that's what you're seeing. Because I'm sure not, I wouldn't say 60 or 50% of people support this. They don't. say it's probably somewhere like 20, 30, but an extra 20 and 30% will accept it because they just don't want to see liberal leadership right now. And I'm not trying to make an excuse for their actions. This is horrible. It's racist. It's disgusting. Makes you want to throw up. But you also got to look at yourself. What have you done or not done to cause this to happen? And you shouldn't put it on yourself. But at the same time, this is a fight that matters a lot. I mean, I don't want to go to a restaurant with my black friends and then be told they can't eat there. They have to go back and get something from the kitchen. I mean, what the is this fucking 1930? I mean, we watched remember the Titans growing up and they won a big game. I think it was the regional championship they won. And they were one of the very first integrated schools and some of them went out in the town and it was I'm not too positive on this, but I believe it was two white men, white straight men, a gay white man, and a black man, and they went to a restaurant, and um, the restaurant owner told him no. If one, you have a black person, and two, you have a gay person, and we don't allow that. And so what did they have to do? They had to leave. Do we really want to live in that world? I mean, when I watched that movie, I really thought that was a thing of the past. I thought that was silly. I kind of thought it was like I don't even know what to say. Like we hope action and law will take place. Obviously, the Civil Rights Act hasn't been repealed, but there's a lot of work to do. And I think this is a huge turning point. How are we going to respond to this? Because what we can't do is just allow it to keep happening, allow this to happen. On our next topic, we'll be going over Social Security and Trump's inevitable plan to end it and Medicare and Medicaid. His argument is it's fiscally right, it's fiscally correct to end Social Security because it's the government's second biggest spender, I believe. Social Security is self-financed. Look at your paycheck. When you're paying, you see that little money they take out for Social Security, that's what goes into Social Security. They don't use tax money for Social Security. So, yeah, that's number one. It's not fiscally irresponsible because it pays for itself. On the other government expenditures we do, sure, you can call that fiscally irresponsible by your conservative view, but this is not. This is clearly not because it is paid for by itself. When you work, you're paying the tax, and that itself, that money is only going to Social Security, and Social Security only uses the money that people put in from the Social Security tax on your pay. So that argument is invalid. And the second thing, do you want to just watch our elderly go into poverty, go in the streets? I mean, that's going to cost us way more to then fix than just keeping Social Security, which finances itself. In South Korea, 41% of people over 65 live in poverty. Think about that, 41%. It's almost half. In America, it's around 10%. Think about that. Almost five times, roughly four times the poverty rate. And that's because they have no Social Security. And while, yeah, you might have a tad bit more money as a kid, as an adult, you don't have security when you're elderly and you can't work and you can't provide economic means that will give you a reward, monetary reward. You can't do it anymore. And then now that's when you're at your weakest. That's not an economically sound plan for your people. It's it's just idiotic, and it's going to get us in a way worse rabbit hole. Uh, I mean, if we want to see less investment, less security, these things, then let's get rid of Social Security. Sure, if we want to handcuff ourselves and stop the flow of our economy, which is what Trump inevitably wants to do, it seems. So today we've gone over three things. We've gone over his ending of the Department of Education and what that looks like, the negative aspects of that. And we didn't cover it, but we're reminded that 9 out of 10 of the top states in education are blue states, and eight of the bottom 10 are red states. And now you might say, okay, what does that have to do with anything? Could easily be coincidence. Coincidence doesn't equal correlation, but when you put less money into education, you see the results. And these red states, they undertax their people, and then they ask the federal government to bail them out, and they're still lowest. And they still do just so poorly in education. And without this federal support, it's going to get even worse. But that also more importantly ties to a bigger topic at hand, the economic pull of this country. Just the blue states just carrying the economic aspect of this country. If you look at which states rely and which states assist the government, a state like California doesn't rely on the government. The government relies on them because they tax their people. And while that may be annoying for a person in California, and it's helping that person in Oklahoma who gets to not pay taxes, but then they get the California tax money to help their life. That's ending now, but the point is high taxes equals revenue, and being a state with low taxes only gets you reliant on the federal government, which I'm sure is not something that conservatives want their states to do. It's not DEI. This isn't him taking away DEI. This is just plain old equality. And he's ripping it, and he can. When you win all three chambers, have a conservative Supreme Court and a ignorance of judges, yeah, I mean, you can do what you want. We'll see how it plays out for him in the future. Then we also talked about Social Security a little bit, why it matters so much, why its fiscally irresponsible argument against it is completely invalid, and why it really helps the average American even when they're not getting the money from Social Security. Economic stability helps you. If we need to give more money to the elderly because they're so poor, like in South Korea, that's going to hurt my paycheck. That's going to hurt your paycheck. That's going to hurt our wallets because the money's got to come from taxpayers. But it's not coming from, a taxpayer point of view. It's self-financed, you know? So that's a win-win. And then Medicare and Medicaid, if they go, that's pretty self-explanatory. A lot of poor people, a lot of people in rural areas are going to lose their health care, are going to not be able to afford food. And, that's going to come with worse economic outcomes than spending government money. 100%, 100%. Because then when cash flow stops in the economy, when these people need federal aid way more than they used to,